exactly, what this Bible is all about. So, and it does also, it's good to overview the fact that the Bible combines such a variety of genres and literary styles. So you have everything in this book. You have history, prophecy, proverbial saying, you have legal matter, and you can go on and just read. Basically, the Bible has everything. And the Bible is the grand story of God. That's why it's such an awesome book, and it's so interesting and so fun to dig into, and why everyone wants to either debate it or preach it. So then what we'll do is go on to questions for reflection. And I'm going to be careful of the time, because if that is the correct time up there, we probably need to do quickly, correct? Because it's 20 to 9.
It's close.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a little fast. And we always have to go faster in San Ramon. We're on like the speed starting point because we don't have as much time. So I'm good at this.
We do it before the service.
Yeah, we're always on this, time thing. So what I did, and I want to share very quickly something that's really neat about this particular part. I started off, and I didn't do the question, what is one of your favorite stories and why do you like it? I did, the book, 1 Samuel 17, and the Bible tells about the story of David and Goliath. I assumed everyone has heard of David and Goliath. I should never assume anyone's heard anything in the Bible. And I said, this is the story of David and Goliath, and I'm just going to kind of give a little overview, and why I really love this book is, and I had written out what I, thought about it. And then this particular lady in the group said, I've never heard that story before. I mean, she's not even from this country. And she hadn't heard the story of David and Goliath. And that got me so excited all the same, because I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. And so she said, will you tell me the story of David and Goliath? So on the spot, sometimes you might have to know you need to know your story. You need to know it, because I know the story. But then I'm like, is it the Philistines? I think it's the Philistines. Yes, it is the Philistines. But you know it. But
And let me interject this, is that I was impressed because I was in there, and I knew this was kind of on the fly. And for some people, it would be better just to read it. But she just off the top of her head told the story in like this captivating way without props. And
no flannel graph?
No, but that is, I said that is one of my all-time favorite books in the Bible, is that story. And basically doing just a little overview of it. I'm not going to tell the story. You guys know the story. If you don't know the story, read it tonight. It's right here. 1 Samuel 17. The best story ever. And what you do is you just kind of go, I basically shared what I took from this, because it teaches them to do the same in the following weeks, and that is David and Goliath is one of my favorite stories, because it deals with family situations, family dynamics. I don't know about you, but I love them. I think we all do. And his relationship to his brothers, they were putting him down, and he kept his eye on the prize. David being true to himself and not trying to use Saul's armor or trying to be someone he's not. His amazing faith in God from his own relationship with God. The fact that he remained focused on God's power, not the problem. He expected God to come through for him, and God did. And that is a great story. And it basically sums it all up. It gives them a little bit of a perspective from someone that has read it. And that lady went home, and she came back. Oh, she's the most precious woman in the world. She's going to be our spokesperson someday for Starting Point, I'm telling you. She came back and she says, I read in her broken English, I read the story, I went home and I read it, and I just read it. And I read it again, and I read it again, and I was just like, that's so neat. That's what it's all about. And she went through Starting Point again this last time, and she read it again, and she read it again. She just loves that story. So that's a good example of just not assuming, number one, and number two, bring it to life. If you just read, could you read the first 5 verses, and then the next person read, okay, so isn't that nice? And then you go on, it's boring, and it's like it doesn't get the punch. So if you kind of bring your own little to it, it brings it to life. And anyway, that's that portion. If you
Good.
Take it from there.
Yeah. So On page 13, it asks the question, does God really exist? Because obviously we're talking about God's story, and it's our hope and really our prayer that through this journey that you'll find your place in God's story. But this question is so pertinent to the whole conversation: is does God really exist? And the thing is that some of us here tonight may have doubts about that and really question, does God really exist? And so if you look at the middle paragraph in a bigger font there, the first thing to acknowledge in this discussion is that there's no way to prove or disprove God's existence, okay? And if you look down to the next paragraph in the bolder print, that being the case, all we can do is examine the evidence for God's existence and draw our own conclusions. So I just want to say to you that in starting point, that's what we're doing. We're looking at the evidence for God's existence, and then you're going to have to make your own conclusion about that. But that's what this journey is all about.
And this portion right here on page 13, the middle, it just highlight that and just read it, because it is so awesome. It's just so great. It takes all your work out of it, because if you read the fact that in reality there's no way to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the planet Jupiter exists, that the Civil War actually happened, that dinosaurs roamed the earth. There's some very compelling evidence for these things, but we don't have any more proof for that than we do the existence of God. And so, and then you can go on from there of deeper discussion, but that's really, really good to highlight and kind of emphasize.
I want to pause for a moment just in this group setting, is that we've talked about this whole idea that you're a tour guide, knowing your roadmap that you're following. But it doesn't mean that you don't take opportunity to read certain sections during the study. And so what Valerie just did there, it'd be great to have someone read that, because the participation is really important. So of course you want to facilitate, you want to lead, but you also want to include. So that's a great point that she just brought out, and we would encourage you, have someone in the group read that. Go, hey, could you read that second paragraph for us, and let that be a part of the experience. So don't shy away from reading. And obviously there's a difference between having someone read and you as a facilitator the whole time going like this, just reading out the book. In facilitating, know where you're going, but don't shy away from having people read certain paragraphs during the study. So that's important.
This other portion right below it is also, it kind of piggybacking on what I'm not as good with names, but what you shared. Sorry. This right here is so great, with just the whole, philosophical standpoint of, reality versus, certainty, uncertainty, cause and, the uncaused, intelligent design, all those wonderful trigger words for atheists and, the people that are really wanting to disprove and discredit creation. It's really good. So that portion right there, I would say, emphasize it, highlight it, and read it, and let them know you're really excited about it. So.
And as we ponder questions like this, if you turn to page 14 with us, you see throughout the scriptures that there were people that pondered the existence of God and expressed it in personal ways. You look on page 14 of what David wrote. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Another verse we see in Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Regardless of your verdict right now, does God exist or not, we want to encourage you to find your place in the grand story of God. That, again, is our hope and desire. So I do have a question for you in regards to this. There's two questions on page 15. I'm not going to ask you both of them, but I'd like a few of you just to comment on this question as to how would you describe God's existence or presence in your life right now. Would some of you be comfortable just sharing a little bit about that from your perspective? Okay, let me ask the first question. What circumstances have caused you to believe or to doubt God's existence?
You know what, I'll actually share that because I think in my life, so many people have said to me, well, you're in that honeymoon phase of knowing God, so surely you're excited, but wait until you're like me. You know, so many people say this to me, wait until, you know, you've been a Christian for 20 years and you're going to be as bored as I am. Like, oh, okay, can't wait, thanks for sharing. But I think as I acknowledge that at this phase of my life, I'm probably moving out of that honeymoon place. What I'm finding is God answering those little tiny prayers in my life is what gets me most excited. And those are the things that I call the miracles. It's not the big things anymore. It's like where I'll wake up and something will happen and I'll go, you did hear me, that detail was important to you, that did mean something to you. And those little tiny things that I almost forgot about. You know, those prayers that you pray when you're driving down the street and you kind of forgot that you prayed them, and then you see the big result of that little tiny prayer. So
that's really cool. I know for me, being a youth pastor for 11 years, when we would see students come to our youth ministry from various backgrounds, some of them from even some pretty bad areas, East Palo Alto, those kinds of places, and we would see them come to our youth ministry and see them come to know Christ in a personal way, and to see the life change, to see them going from doing some pretty crazy things, you know, not God-honoring things. You can imagine, you know, what that would include: gang banging and, you know, drugs and, you know, all kinds of stuff. And to see them come to know Christ and then to see their actions change has always been something that's just increased my faith. Just going, you know, God is a miracle-working God, and that we can put, you know, society can have rules and all this kind of thing, but until there's a change on the inside, someone's heart and life, their actions aren't going to change until that change takes place. So I know for me, seeing people come to Christ is something that is so important. Even in our service just a couple of weeks ago, you know, in the series Miracles, we had two people in San Ramon who came in, and both of them accepted Christ. And when they were walking out, when I looked in their eyes, the look in their eyes was totally different. And it was because of the life-changing power of Christ. And so when I have those kinds of experiences, it just confirms in me, you know, the existence of God and the power of God. So I can, you know, totally relate with what you're saying there too.
I think for me, because I'm further along in life and I can look back and see where God put me in places that turned out to be miraculous. One of those was the birth of my daughter, who is now married to a pastor in Colorado Springs and was a missionary for 7 years. I don't going to take the time to, if anybody wants, I'll tell you later how that happened. But it just occurred to me that that was, God kept moving me and my and her father to places where a doctor made it possible for me to become pregnant. He said that I was the second case like that he'd seen in his 12 years of practice. But this was back in Des Moines, Iowa, where I did not want to be. But God put me there. And so, I mean, I just have seen several examples of that where I didn't see it as a miracle at the time. It had a tremendous impact on my life.
Yeah. That's powerful. Thanks for sharing that.
You talk